Hi guys, today I just wanted to go over how to make Cuban coffee. Now I realize that there are a bazillion videos on YouTube on how to make Cuban coffee. The thing is, virtually all of them say that you need one of these. And this is actually an Italian espresso pot. Now I actually saw one video where somebody said that Cuban coffee was basically Italian espresso with lots of sugar. That's not really true. The way this makes coffee and the way coffee was traditionally brewed in Cuba is different. The way this works is that this has a reservoir for the coffee. And, you know, if you've been to a few coffee shops where they're serving espresso, you'll see that they'll take something like this. They'll pour pour coffee into it, pack it, and then add more coffee. And then in this pot, the water in this reservoir gets filled up to this overpressure valve. This pops basically if the pressure, if it gets clogged and it gets overpressure, so that it doesn't explode. But you fill the water to here, and then you drop this metal filter with the coffee in here and clamp on the top. Now once the water boils and builds pressure, it's going to push the water up through this tube, through the coffee. Then it's going to go through these filters, come up through this spout, and then pour into the reservoir. And so basically what you have is just a one shot through, very fast pressure pushing the water through the coffee. Now, in fact, expensive espresso machines actually use a mechanical pump to push the water through the coffee. Now in Cuba, the way my mom always used to make coffee is that she had a pot that came with a colander, and here's a picture of that. And you can see from this that the sort of funnel up at the top holds the cloth filter, which is just like the one that I have that my friend gave me from Venezuela, and the coffee would get brewed in the pot that's just below. And so this is what she used, and these are, when I went to Cuba, these are all over the place in Cuba. This is what everybody was using to make coffee. And here's a picture of, a lady in Cuba pouring coffee through a cloth filter. So that's just how it was done. Now this is, they call it a sock, una media in Spanish. And so, here's one that a friend of mine got me from Venezuela. Nothing special about it, wood handle, so it's very inexpensively made. And the other one's just made out of plastic. But basically, you simmer the coffee in the water for a few minutes. Now, and then once you've simmered the coffee for a few minutes, at just before a boil, then you would take it and pour it through the sock, the cloth filter, to filter out the grounds. And then you put in a ton of sugar. Now, from that perspective, Cuban coffee is actually, it's a lot closer to a French press, right? In a French press, you load the coffee in, and then pour in boiling water, and once it's steeped for a few minutes, then you can press this through. So the difference between these and the espresso pot is that these allow the coffee to steep for several minutes, and the espresso pot doesn't. It's just pushing it through. The difference from my palate is that this gives you a fuller, richer flavor, whereas with the espresso pot, you pretty much just get the caffeine and the bitterness. And now another difference is actually the ratio of coffee. When my mom was making coffee when I was a kid, she was putting in a tablespoon to a tablespoon and a half per cup of water. And of course, she was just, eyeballing it. But the ratio of coffee in an espresso pot is much, much higher. So if I fill this reservoir to the line, I get a cup of water. And if I fill this filter and pack it and fill it again, I get 3 ounces of coffee dry. And so a tablespoon is about a half of an ounce. So this is like 6 tablespoons. So you can see that this is 6 times maybe 4 times, depending on how much coffee you put in. But this is 4 to 6 times the amount of coffee that got brewed into coffee when I was a kid. So those are the basic differences. So the way we would make coffee is pour the water into the pan, and now I'm going to take this over to the stove. Okay, so I've brought that to just a roll. It's just below like a full out boil, and now I'm going to just add like a rounded tablespoon of coffee. And you can use pretty much any espresso roast. I'm using Bustelo. And I'm just going to keep it stirred while it steeps. And you want to do this for a couple of minutes. Again, just to let the coffee steep, and you want to keep it moving so that the coffee doesn't settle at the bottom and burn. Okay, so I've been steeping the coffee, and now I'm just going to take the cloth filter and the coffee and just pour it through. And this is where my mom's fixture came in, because she didn't have to hold it. The fixture would hold the filter, and she would just pour the coffee in and then just let it drain. At this point, a lot of families I know will just actually, filter it into the pot or into a measuring pitcher like this, and then add the sugar. And how much sugar you put in is up to you, but typically in Cuba it's a lot of sugar. So I'm going to probably put in 4 or 5 teaspoons of sugar into this, maybe more, because quite frankly, a lot of the food in Cuba is sweet. So you'll have a dinner that'll have rice and beans and fried plantains. So there's always something sweet on the table. So I'm going to add a lot of sugar to this, and then this is basically it. Now, you can also use this for making café con leche. Now, café con leche is just coffee and milk. So you would make the coffee, and then you would simmer it a little bit with milk, as opposed to just pouring creamer on top. Now, that's another thing that is very popular in Cuba. And again, let me stress that. This is sort of peasant way of making coffee, and it's the way I always saw it being done when I was in Cuba, and it's the way my mom did it when I was growing up. Now, I'll admit, my mom also switched over to the espresso pot, and I know a lot of Cubans here, virtually all of them, have switched over to the pot, strictly for convenience. It's a lot easier to use. You don't have to get the grounds out of this cloth filter and wash it, but the flavor is definitely different. And I know the last time I went back to Cuba, and everybody was making coffee this traditional way, the memories just came flooding back. Anyway, that's how to make Cuban coffee the way it's made in Cuba. Thanks.